Before I get into this week's talk, I want to tell you something about last week. So I did this talk, right, on tending your own fire, and I was pretty fired up by that. So I got out of here pretty fired up by tending to my own fire, and I went for this walk, which I do a lot on Sunday afternoons. And normally when I walk, I like to walk on the grass instead of the pavement because, everybody says it's better to walk on grass. But now that I'm tending my own fire, I thought I'd spend a little extra time testing it out, seeing how does this really feel, because I really hadn't done that. And so I'm walking out there, and I'm walking on the grass, and I'm walking on the pavement, and I'm walking on the grass, and walking on the pavement. And the first thing I noticed was pretty obvious, that when it came to my bones, it really did feel better walking on the grass. But the next thing I noticed I'd never realized before, which is on the grass, my muscles worked harder. And I hadn't experienced, I hadn't taken the time to really look at that. And so what I realized out of that is I could do the same length of walking, and if I'm walking on grass, I'm getting a better workout for the same length. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I just thought it was cool as all get out. So anyway, my talk for today is called Challenge the Impossible. And so people have been doing that throughout the ages, but a lot of times we get stuck. We get stuck in thinking, well, it's science, it's experts, it's all this stuff that goes on that says this is impossible. And we've been challenging that all along. Originally there was these guys who were the experts who said, you cannot travel around the world is flat. And then, of course, somebody said, well, I got to go check that out. And they're going, you're going to fall off the edge. And he didn't. And then everybody was like, oh, I guess the world isn't flat. But that was impossible before it was possible. Galileo gets thrown into prison because they were so angry at him saying that the Earth went around the sun instead of the sun going around the earth. They were saying that's impossible because we're the center of the universe. A lot of us feel that way, huh? And so impossible, is constantly challenged. And then some people say, oh, well, that was the Dark Ages. That was before science. That's before we knew better. Really? Einstein comes up with E = mc squared. And puts it out to the scientific community. And they laughed at him. They said, it's impossible that something as complex as the relationship between energy and matter could be brought down to such a simple equation. Impossible. Einstein sat back and said, okay. 15 years it took the scientific community to catch up to him, who already knew what was possible. This stuff goes on all the time. And in your life, you really need to watch this. Or let me put that differently, because you don't really need to, but I recommend that you do. I recommend that you take a look at what you think is possible, because it may be limiting you from what your true experience here could be. One of the things that goes on in life is you get asked, what do you want? And it's a red flag if you say you don't know. If you say you don't know when somebody asks you what you want, the odds are you don't believe what you want is possible, and it's really hard to think about what you want second. Take that in for a second. That the odds are if you answer, I don't know what I want, it's because you think what you want is not possible. And I'm here to tell you it is. I'm here to tell you that there are ways and beings and stuff going on, miraculous stuff going on all the time that has nothing to do with the causation that we think it does. Nothing to do with it at all. That we are in a world of our own making. And if we want it to be made differently, it is up to us. Like I said last week, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Don't ask somebody else to do it. You got to do it. You got to be that change. back in the 50s, there was a big push from runners trying to run faster than 4 minutes in a mile. There were people from all over the world trying to make this, and it became such a thing and so public that scientists and physicians started weighing in, and every one of them weighed in the same. It's impossible for the body to run faster than a 4-minute mile. And they would put up all this proof. They had pages of documents and from experts of what is possible here, and how the bone structure and the tendons and all this stuff. And they were so convincing that most folks gave up. They said, oh, it's not possible, so I'm not even going to try. There was this one guy, Roger Bannister. He was like, yeah, I don't know. I think I can do this. And he kept at it and kept at it. And sure enough, he finally broke the 4-minute mile, came in at 3 minutes, 59 seconds. And actually that started to get improved. But here's the most interesting part about that story, is that within 6 months of him breaking that record, 12 other people from around the world did it. And that happened because all of a sudden they realized it was possible. What was thought of as impossible. We're constantly confronted by things that experts want to tell us is possible. Those experts may be our parents. They may be our best friends. They may be the authority inside our heads. Right? And so these are the kinds of things we need to watch out for in ourselves when we think something is impossible. Are we willing to challenge that? Are we willing to say, maybe this is possible? Maybe the problem is the way I'm looking at it, because sometimes that's the problem. We think that it must be a particular way, and since it can't be that way, it doesn't look that way, then it's impossible. It was this guy on the golf tour. You know, because one of the questions I get asked is, because if anything's possible, can a 60-year-old woman play in the NFL? And my answer, if anything's possible, how come this isn't happening? And so a lot of this has to do with what is ours to do. So the answer is yes and no, because it's yes in the standpoint, if that was really hers to do, it would get figured out. But mostly 60-year-old grandmas have other things on their minds that are theirs to do than play in the NFL and get knocked around by a 250-pound linebacker. So there's this guy. And his dream, he thought, was to be a pro golfer, be on that tour. He loved golf. The guy loved golf. And he kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and he wasn't very good. He didn't get very good at it. So what he did for his day job was he was a computer programmer. He loved being a computer programmer. So he said, I'm going to get better at this by developing a program that's going to help me watch my swing and get better at my swing. And so he develops that program, and sure enough, it improves his game so much that the pros start to notice. And so they start coming up to him and going, so how did you do that? How did you improve your game so much? And he told them about the program, and they're like, I want that program. I'll pay you for that program. And so he started not only selling the program to the pros, but then they wanted to buddy up to this guy. They wanted to buddy up to him. So now he's getting to buddy up to all the people he admired and loved, and they'd invite him out to play, not only in tournaments, but outside tournaments. He's now getting to play with these guys all the time, and he's having a ball. And then somebody says, you really ought to make this program available to the general public. You'll make millions. And he did. So he got interviewed. And somebody asked him straight out, I thought your dream was to play on the pro circuit. And he said, I thought that was too, but now that I got the quality, I get to play golf with all the people I love. I get to be involved in the game with none of the pressure of actually having to win the tournament. This is way better, and I had no idea that this was even possible. That's what happens when we let go of what it looks like and allow for something larger to come along. I took a while to learn that lesson. I had written this song back somewhere in the 80s. The largest publishing company in the, one of the largest publishing companies in the world comes up to me and goes, we want to sign that song. Because we got all these bands who have let us know they're willing to record that, they want to record that song. And I said, no, I want to record the song. This is for me to do. And so I turned that down. A little while later, my band got signed by Paul Simon's management company, and one of the things they did is set up this huge showcase at the bitter end in Greenwich Village. Had all these industry people there, and they videotaped it, and it was an incredible experience. And the next day, they invite me up to the offices to watch the video, and I was terrible. I was so flat. It must have been the worst performance I had ever done. And it was on video, and it was in front of all those music industry people. So Paul Simon's people go, we have this singer who could front your band. You could still be in the band, you still get to play. And I said, no. I'm a really slow learner, I'm the one who has to sing these songs. And then years later, I looked back on that and go, because one of the things that happened once I had the voice lessons and people started telling me how great I was and I got all these reviews and things started happening, I hated being in the spotlight. I didn't know that back then, because I hadn't gotten there yet, right? But once I got there and I'm in the spotlight, I'm like, I don't actually like this. I don't like this kind of attention. And if I'd known that back then, if I'd actually had the lesson back then of, opening to what's truly in me, opening to how I really want to express myself in the world, I would have seen that the idea of selling my song was a way better idea, given where my future has taken me, which is in front of you guys, which is perfect. And so that's part of it, right? We have to be willing to let go of what it looks like to allow to show up what it can be. But that doesn't mean you're letting go and thinking that what you think is impossible, because I promise you, if you have a yearning, you have the resources to make it come true. You have that. It's in you. Science goes along, and we've been walking on this planet for at least 150,000 years as Homo sapiens. And we're still just scratching at the ideas of what's possible here. We're still in the dark ages. We still get stuck in thinking that Newtonian physics is all there is. The solidity of this thing. Quantum physics tells us this ain't so solid. One of the experiments that they do in one of the early experiments that in quantum physics had to do with particles and waves, right? It turned out that if the person observing said, it's going to be a wave, sure enough it was. They were right. If somebody else came along and said, it's going to be a particle, it was. They were right. And they never really figured out how that was. They just call it the observer effect because they didn't know what else to call it. Turns out that science is as much as a religion as Catholic. They're just making this stuff up and saying it's real and then finding the proof to back it up. Because that's what we do. If we're so sure we're right, we're gonna find the proof that we are. If you're so sure you're right, you can prove it. No matter what, you can prove it. So, I've mentioned to you before, I've been involved in a lot of Native American rituals. One of them was literally called a death ceremony. And so Rocking Bear, the shaman who decided to put me through that particular ritual, said, prepare yourself to die. And he met a few times, he says, prepare yourself to die. That's all he'd tell me about it. I'd ask him questions like, what's gonna happen, this and that, wouldn't tell me anything. Just said, prepare yourself to die. So, the day finally comes, and the Arapaho medicine woman who I apprenticed with for 3 years, she was there. She drummed during the whole ceremony. And the ceremony looked like this. It was March. I was brought to a river. On the river were floating ice. There was a waterfall. On the waterfall were these huge ice. He stuck me under the waterfall in the water, and he said, die. And the drumming is going on, and I'm there in the water. And if you know anything from science, you know that within 15 minutes, hypothermia sets in. 45 minutes later, the shaman's getting frustrated because I haven't died. He's literally getting frustrated and pulls me out. And even the shaman said, that is impossible, that you were in, this is a shaman saying this, that you were in there 45 minutes and didn't die. But while I was in there, I'm disappeared in the drum. All I heard was the drum. All I traveled with was the drum. I totally forgot I was even in the water for at least 30 minutes of it. There's just no telling what's possible when you got a shaman telling you this is impossible. You gotta really take a look at what are you thinking when you're looking out and saying, well, here's the proof, this is what it is, because it's not. You have been brought forth by life. You have been brought forth to bring something that is yours to bring forth, that is special and brilliant for you. You have been brought forth for this. Life has brought you here so that you could become all that you came here to be. If any part of it looks impossible to you, challenge it. Challenge it. Challenge it. There's so much more going on than we can see. All the time. I've told you the story about when I was hospitalized. I got to the point where they were telling me that it was I had ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, and I had so much scar tissue in my intestines that they were saying it was no longer a matter of if I would get cancer, but when. I left Western medicine, moved into other healing modalities, and 3 years later went back to be tested. And so they did these, they do the photographs of your intestines. And then looking at the photographs, the first word out of the doctor's mouth was, that's impossible. The first words. He said, there is just no way with all the scar tissue you had that now you have none, that it's all gone. It's impossible. And yet there it was. So I come up to you and I'm in front of you today to say that my entire life has felt and been told by others to be impossible. The fact I am alive in front of you today, there are those who thought was an impossibility. And given that my life itself is an impossibility, I don't really listen to that word much. And I am an authority on impossible, bringing to you today the possibility that rests in you. Because the thing about it is the honest to God truth is that I'm not special. I'm not some exception. The things I've done and what I've been through, any of you could have done if you'd been there. And that was what was before you at the time. So take a look at what's before you now, in this moment. Because there's something there for all of us that can have life be miraculous instead of just normal. Instead of just okay. Truly miraculous. This is what's possible. I've seen it. I've seen it in each of you. Each of you carries that seed of the miraculous, that it is yours to bring forth if you are willing to challenge the idea that there's anything that's impossible. Let go of what it looks like, because you don't know. I didn't know. You know, being in that place of unknown, being willing to see something deeper than what we thought we were seeing. That's where the magic is. Even I, at this point, still don't know. I still, always, no matter what the situation, maybe not at first. First I get, that's the thing about this. I've been through all this stuff, right? And I still get pissed. I still act out. I'm still not always my best self. With all that I've been through, I'm a slow learner. But the key is to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep being willing to challenge what you think is happening in front of you. Because I promise it's not. Whatever it looks like, however it feels, it's not exactly what it seems. Quantum physics proves that every day. That what we think is so solid, what we think is so sure, the worst thing you can do is be sure you're right. If you're sure you're right, you are, and you've just limited your possibilities. If you're sure you're right, you are, and you've limited what's possible. Open to something greater because it's there. It has to be. We are. There are days I wake up tired. And then I have to remind myself that I have all of the power of the universe within me. Man, there is nothing more a wake-up call. You can have all the coffee you want, but once you really get that you're the entire universe, like Rumi says, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're in the entire ocean in a drop. Once you really get that, in whatever moment you finally get that, then boom, you have all the energy you could possibly imagine. Now, I'm not saying I get that every moment of every day. I don't. I forget it so quickly, it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. It cracks me up all the time. I'm laughing at myself all the time. Really? I forgot again? It's like that's what goes on. And but I don't get on my case about it. I just go, oh, another chance to remember. Another moment to remember what's really true, what's really possible. There's something beyond here I don't yet see. That's here. That's here for me. That's here for you. That's here for all of us. Thank you. I love you.